Dan Fallows leaves Aston, Alpine X Mercedes, and an O2 live event. This is Shifting Happens Pit Stop. Hello, everybody, and yes, welcome to the first episode of Shifting Happens Pit Stop. Every so often, whenever there's big news to discuss, we will come here and talk to you about it. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by the man they call the A-side, Shez. How are you, my friend? How are you doing?
Oh, wrong hand. Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, good. It's good to be on here. Good to see you, and there's loads to talk about, which is interesting for some time off, because the last break we had, it felt like it was like tumbleweeds. There was nothing happened. It's like, but I felt like we really needed a break in the summer, didn't we? And this feels much more like I just want to get back into racing again.
Oh, no, absolutely, mate. I hear you. And thankfully, they've blessed us with a lot of news. So that's why we're here to talk about it now. But before we go into it, just a quick shout out to our wonderful producer who is working very busily behind the scenes, making us sound beautiful and making us sound a lot more beautiful than we actually are. It is, of course, the wonderful Fly. Please do show him some love. So, first bit of news to discuss Alpine. My God. This is big. Long rumoured, but it's finally confirmed they are stopping their engine manufacturing. They're going to become a customer team from 2026, and it will be Alpine X Mercedes. Shares your thoughts on that initially.
Well, I mean, these are less initial thoughts, aren't they? Because we've kind of known this was coming for ages, especially given the riots that seem to be happening outside the factory gates at Viri. I guess I look at it in like two ways. Either this is a truly pragmatic move by a team that have been stagnant for too long, with a power unit that's never really been the benchmark in Formula One, like from the very beginning in 2014. Like, they've never really got this right. Either it's that they realize that jettisoning that and then giving the race team in Enstone all of the resources to make a good fist of it, maybe that's the reason. Or it's because, as it's been suggested, that actually this is the first step towards Alpine just selling their team. I have to say I'm still a little bit undecided on this. For a works team to willingly give up their power unit, the integration that brings, the performance that it should bring, that this is something that teams fight for. Ron Dennis famously said in 2015 that, look, you cannot fight for a world championship unless you have a works engine deal. And maybe he was just trying to talk up their new Honda alliance at that point, but I still think that rings true, and this seems like a massive backwards step to me, and I can only really see it from that point of view, that ultimately it's a step towards Renault, who have long been uninterested in their team, not wanting to put in the resources, constantly going on about, well, we want to be the most efficient team and win on a budget. This is basically them making the ultimate kind of can't be bothered move.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Shez. Absolutely have to agree with you. I mean, this is shocking for a team that, as an engine manufacturer, last won the World Championship only back in 2013. They did the double with Red Bull and Sebastian Vettel. They won 4 in a row. And then as a constructor team, they won the double with Fernando Alonso 05-06. So, I mean, this is a team with pedigree, with history. They've brought back Flavio Briatore to try and steer the ship in the right direction, along with Oliver Oakes as the new team principal. They've just had the double podium in Brazil. Yeah, I mean, as you've just said, this is long rumoured and not surprising in a lot of ways. Though the thing that intrigues me the most is this. Why Mercedes? Because this is from 2026. and you're thinking, okay, well, the entire engine landscape is resetting in 2026. So why have they decided to go for Mercedes? Are they going because they know something about the Mercedes engine? They think that's the one we want to be with, or they're going, look, Mercedes are tried and trusted. They are reliable. We know they're going to produce a good engine. But this is a sporting team looking for performance. So, Shez, do you think they know something about that Mercedes engine, or just?
Well, I mean, we can just look at the options, can't we? So, in terms of who else is available, you've got Mercedes, who currently would be are supplying who? McLaren, and that
Williams.
McLaren and Williams.
Yeah.
And from next year, from 2026, Aston are going to switch over to Honda power, aren't they?
Yeah, so they've got Aston until next year. Yeah.
So from the point at which this deal would start, Mercedes would be supplying Mercedes. They'd be supplying Alpine, Williams, and McLaren.
Yeah.
Right. So they'd have more customers than anybody else on the grid. So that in and of itself is probably a good reason. That's a decent test bed for them to be able to troubleshoot stuff and make developments. Who else is there? You've got Ferrari. So Ferrari are currently supplying themselves and Haas
and Sauber, but not
Sauber. But
obviously
they won't from 26, right?
Audi in 26, yeah.
So then you've got Audi, but you don't really want to. You're probably not going to bet on Audi, no. Being that however much of a lead up they've had, this is going to be a brand new venture for them. Same with Honda. Like you're probably not going to get into bed with Honda until you know definitively that they've understood the rule set this time, which is not always a guarantee for them. and then you've got Red Bull Powertrains, who are like completely an unknown entity. You can call it Ford if you want to, but ultimately it's Red Bull Powertrains. Literally starting up from scratch. So probably also not a great alternative. So it's a choice between Mercedes and Ferrari, I think, are the only two realistic options. And yeah, as you say, there seem to be pretty good rumors coming out of Mercedes.
Also, just that reminds me of something they said in the Brawn documentary when they were looking at when Brawn were looking which engine do we put in, because they had options, and they said, well, Ferrari, you can have a Ferrari engine, but you can't beat Ferrari with it, whereas Mercedes, you can do a good. I mean, obviously the factory team didn't exist back then, but I mean, look, the Mercedes engine car is currently favourite to win the World Constructors' Championship this year.
I still think a bit of an indictment on the Mercedes works team, if you ask me. But the rules have changed a little bit now. Like I understand that Haas are not doing as well as they should be, and nor Sauber. But Sauber for various reasons are underperforming. Right? They've got a parent team or a parent entity that are brand new to Formula One. They have no idea how this runs, and they've got a brand new management that have only just come in. So for them to be beating the Ferrari works team, I think is asking too much. And Haas just don't have the budget. They're starting to ramp things up, and I think the Toyota. I think that's going to be super confusing at some point, isn't it? With Toyota being in there as well, whatever that's going to bring to it. But does that mean that Toyota are going to be taking over a bit more of the chassis side of things? Perhaps it sounds like there's going to be some investment in infrastructure at Haas, but they again are a victim of underinvestment, whereas McLaren don't have that. McLaren are pretty flush right now. Aston Martin also pretty flush right now, although they're not beating the works team, and Mercedes have made fundamental errors.
It's a tough one, and I think you've kind of explained it beautifully there as to why they would more likely go with Mercedes rather than Ferrari. I mean, the thing for me is this is a team, Alpine, that has got investment like more than I'd say most teams, if you think about it, like with the status that they've got. They've got Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Rory McIlroy, and Anthony Joshua, to name but a few sports stars that have invested into the team. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, of course, the owners of Wrexham, Hollywood actors, everything else. Like, they're going to want to see some bang for their buck, and maybe maybe they are pulling some string going, hey, well, why have we got this engine program that nobody's interested in? So let's just cut that and join Mercedes. Maybe, I don't know, or is this purely a Flavio thing? It's definitely an interesting one. But I want to pose this question to you, Shez. Do you think Mercedes will then go to Alpine or whoever they might become in the future and say, hey, look, we've got this exciting young driver coming through. Why don't you give him a seat for a year or two, and then like they did with George Russell and Williams?
Yeah, but they've not really had that. They've not really had that available to them at, say, Aston, right? Aston have been running Mercedes engines for a while now. And actually, that was the very first sort of big technical partnership that happened in Formula One, didn't it? Back in 2008 or 9, when Force India first started using Mercedes engines and gearboxes. But they've not really had that much influence on the seat there. And I think there's as much it's as much to do with the dynamics of a team as it is to do with the engine manufacturer having say. Like, again, you would never expect to see Toto Wolff turn up at Woking and tell Zach Brown, mate, I need you to have Kimi Antonelli in your second seat. That's
true, but I'm just, I'm thinking because obviously George went to Williams for 3 years and kind of cut his teeth there. Obviously, Ocon was part of the Force India Racing Point team as well, and was there as a Mercedes young driver / cutting his own teeth in the sport, and then eventually moved to Team Enston. But yeah, I think interesting one there. And quickly, just before we move on to another topic, there's a rumor doing the rounds that Alpine are very interested in Franco Colapinto, along with Red Bull. So much so that apparently, this is just rumor mill, could be internet hearsay, who knows, that we're just adding to. But they might try and shift Jack Doohan off to the side and bring in Colapinto. I mean, I think that would be unbelievably harsh on Doohan, given how much he's done behind the scenes, being the reserve driver and probably putting in a lot of hours on the sim. Well, what's your take on that?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because the advantage that Franco Colapinto has, right, is that despite the fact that the current F2 grid looks like it's probably the best F2 grid I think I've ever seen, the fact is that no matter how good people might think drivers on that current F2 grid are, he's the only one that's actually in F1 right now, other than Ollie Behrman, regularly showing what he can do. And it's not been completely smooth sailing for him, although he started off pretty strongly. He's the last 2 races haven't been quite at the same level as the first 3 races, so there's still more to come from him. But I think, as you say, Jack Doohan has been their reserve driver. He's done the hard work in the background. He does their sim work right now, and it would be massively harsh. And also, you're not guaranteed an upside by having Colapinto in the car, no matter what you're seeing right now. To have the chance to develop your own driver, actually, I think makes more sense. It makes more sense for Colapinto to go somewhere like Red Bull, given that they have a little bit of a driver problem right now, despite wanting Liam Lawson in the car.
Yeah, that's I think the really interesting one. I think, and I think we might address this in a video. Let's keep your eyes peeled for that. But I think that's definitely something that the Red Bull situation is very interesting. But there's definitely a pathway to better teams. The only thing I can see being in Colapinto's side, as well as having sort of credit in the bank for what he's doing at Williams currently, is sponsorship. I mean, look at the sponsorship that Williams have been able to get just by having him in the car.
Yeah.
Flavio Briatore is going to want a slice of that. But
he's also then going to have to pay the big bucks to get Franco out of whatever Williams contract he's got at the moment, though, right?
The rumored figure I've heard is 20 million euros, which that's small change to F1 teams.
I don't know, man. That's a decent chunk of change for somebody that is practically unproven.
For a 5-race rookie. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a lot to ask. So let's see. Keep your eyes peeled on that one. But we do other stories to address. There was some very exciting news, particularly for us here in the UK, is that there's going to be a new live reveal event on the 18th of February next year. All 10 cars, well, all 10 liveries will be revealed at this event, because there ain't no way they're showing off their car at this event. But it's going to happen at the O2 in London. It's to celebrate the 75th anniversary of Formula One. And it means that we don't have to go through the procession of really boring car reveals where you've got Alpine technical directors talking for 3 hours about, when we changed this wing nut. It's like, shut up, just show us the car. But it'll be great for fans to experience these as well. And we hopefully get to see the drivers. I mean, come on to see Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari red. That's going to be awesome. So yeah, and I want to give a shout out actually to a friend of mine, friend of Shez's as well, Steve Price from Lucky Sons, who basically said F1 should do this in a space that I hosted with him and Cameron. And somehow F1 have clearly heard this and gone, actually, that's not a bad idea. But Shez, are you excited for this? And like me, are you going to be looking to get tickets?
Oh yeah. So we were just talking about this offline, weren't we? Yeah, lest there be any more accusations of British bias, why is it that F1 has chosen the O2 in London to reveal all the cars? Had nothing to do with us. We the British media didn't ask for it. Certainly I didn't.
Yeah.
And having said that, it would probably be a bit churlish to kind of go, yeah, I'm not going to buy a ticket, but they are pretty expensive. I've heard something up to £113 per ticket.
Honestly, mate, I thought it would have been worse than that. When I saw the prices, I thought, actually, that's not awful.
It's not that bad.
I thought the cheapest price would be 3 figures minimum, whereas it's about £58 or something. I mean, I can see why it's happening in London. If you think 7 of the teams are based in the UK, and then you've got like most of the media are British, but also Formula One as an entity started in Britain, so it's a nice little touch there as well. Okay, it's obviously not in London, but I'm half expecting them to announce a London street race at some point. But
they've been bandying that one for ages, haven't they?
30 years at least.
but no, I mean, I think it would be. I think to see the drivers would be quite cool, because unless you've got a paddock pass for a Grand Prix, you're probably not going to get close to a driver for any other reason. I still don't think you're going to get particularly close to them at this event, but at least you'll be in the same room, I guess. But from what I understand, as you say, it's probably just going to be livery reveals. I have to say, I quite like the technical directors talking about every last wing nut. It's the only time I get super interested in the techie stuff. And maybe we're going to miss out on that a little bit. And then, there's an entire tranche of content creators that build their following around the first few weeks of the new season when all of these reveals happen. So what the heck are they going to be doing?
Yeah, no, it's going to be tough, isn't it? Yeah. Though I will say, and I said this on Twitter and I'll say it here now, F1, if you need some singing, give me a call. Here's my job. I'll probably be cheaper than most pop stars. So, please do give me a call.
All he wants is a free ticket.
Basically, and can you get my wife in as well, and then fly these guys over and get the Shifting Happens crew and the Shakedown crew in as well, and we'll go from there. But this is exciting, and I think it's a different way to engage the fan base as well. Though that being said, it's also a way to monetize the fan base as well. Liberty Media, we see what you're doing there.
We are monetized so much.
I know. When Ferrari did their 23 launch, I think they got the guys in for free, right? Like, I don't think
Did they?
I think so. I don't know. I don't know if they charge them. Somebody please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. But yeah,
man, it's just being an F1 fan right now is a super expensive business. Like you have to be pretty minted to even watch the show. That's the problem, isn't it?
It is the problem. But maybe one day that will change. Who knows? Now, one of the really big stories this week, or in the last 24 hours, really, is the departure of Niels Wittich as the race director. This came out of nowhere. Wittich took over the role just before the 2022 season. Obviously, he replaced Michael Masi for reasons that we do not need to go into. He took on the role alongside Eduardo Freitas. Freitas then departed after the Japanese Grand Prix in 2022 when he completely bungled the red flag, putting tractors on track and sort of giving everyone uncomfortable memories of 2014. But Vitic actually has been really good. I haven't had too many issues with the way that he's done it. I mean, there will be those that will say, "Oh, red flags are too slow and blah blah blah." But as Marshall will tell you, that's not necessarily always his doing. Sometimes the clerk of the course, there's layers of communication that we just don't know about. But this looks to have been a conflict with everyone's favourite FIA president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem. Shez, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, the way it was announced, well, number one, the fact that it's happened so suddenly with 3 races still left to go, the comments that have come from him, is it from German media or yeah, where he said, "Look, I didn't resign," so essentially saying, "Look, I was fired." Yeah, it makes it sound very much like if you put all of those things together, and we're not getting a full picture from anybody at the moment, but it sounds very much like this is a personal issue between Niels Vitic and the president of the FIA. And as you say, this is basically the latest in a revolving door of people that have left. I was just having a look at the BBC's coverage of this, and so far I've got Steve Nielsen, who was the previous sporting director, left in December 2023. Tim Goss, who was the single-seater technical director, left in January. Natalie Robin left as CEO in May. Although that one, the last 2 felt a little bit more like they had got what they needed to get out of the job that they were in at the FIA, and they just took better positions in other organisations. Although that does beg the question: what does the FIA need to do to make it more attractive for staff to stay there? But this one seems very, very much pointed as a clash of heads between Vitic and Ben Sulayem.
Yeah, it's an odd one. It's an odd one. Like it completely came out of nowhere. There was reporting that basically said that his team weren't told until basically the news came out, just to say, "Oh yeah, he's gone." So Rui, hang on, I've got his name here. Rui Marquez, who is the race director for Formula 2 and Formula 3, he is stepping up to take on the Formula 1 job for the rest of the season. I have no doubt he will probably take on the job for permanently as well, unless they can find somebody and parachute them in. But yeah, I am flabbergasted by this, and I think it once again highlights the issues within the FIA as well, in regards to Formula 1 and the way that they run that side of the sport. It's not uncommon that there is a retention issue with key staff.
But this is such a massive change, though, right? Like this is off the back of somebody else's tweet, but I think it's pertinent, right? That under the previous presidencies, right, you had Charlie Whiting basically in the race director role from 1997 until 2019, and it wasn't because he left. He, God rest his soul, he passed away. Right, and that was under the auspices of Max Mosley and Jean Todt, and although they had contrasting styles, they seemed to engender like a lot of loyalty in the staff that they had within them. Right, like Charlie Whiting was previously Brabham, wasn't he? So he used to work with Bernie Ecclestone, and we know what the relationship was with Bernie and Max. So having people like Charlie Whiting, Herbie Blash, all in the same place kind of made sense, but they stayed there for ages. Since we've had a change of presidency, Jean Todt has left. We've had Michael Massey, who left for the reasons that you won't state. We've then had, as you say, Niels Vitic and Eduardo Freitas for a couple of seasons, and now we're having another change in a role that we know requires a length of time to get really, really good at it, to understand the precedents, to understand how things work and to be exposed to different scenarios. So to have this kind of turnover, however good Louis, what's his name?
Rui Marquez.
Sorry, Rui. Sorry,
Rui,
Rui
yeah.
Marquez. Yeah. So however good Rui Marquez has been in F2 and F3, he doesn't have the data bank that even Niels Wittich has built up over the past 3 seasons. And we're just going to dump that because he's out. He's completely out. We're just going to dump that because there's been a conflict with the FIA president. And it always comes back to that. The gaff is always with Mohammed bin Sulayem. And yeah, I find it infuriating.
No, I agree with you. It's very frustrating to watch. And, given the basically trail of destruction that Mazzi had left in his wake, and it wasn't just Abu Dhabi as well. It was, do we remember the negotiation he had in Saudi Arabia? It was just like, oh yeah, so this is the offer I'm presenting to you, Red Bull. It's like, what? And this is a team that is well known to be underfunded, not looked after properly. So, yeah, fascinating times ahead. I'll be very interested to see how Rui Marquez gets on and how the teams will react to him, because I know that the teams had taken a while to build up that relationship with Wittich, but it was a good one from what I understand. So, difficult times ahead. But, the last 3 races, big test as well. Vegas could be a tricky one for him first up, because that could potentially be a track. He had great racing action last year and potentially could have a safety car, a couple of safety cars. That's going to be a lot for him to handle. So, we will watch that one with interest. And this isn't the last time you're going to hear from Shifting Happens on this, because I know that Marshall is going to do a little video detailing his thoughts on it. Obviously, he is a marshal and he understands the role of race director a lot better than all of us. So he's going to give a little video later on detailing his thoughts. Okay, last topic of this little video. We're going to talk, and this is probably the biggest news, I would say, alongside Niels Wittich, but it's Dan Fallows leaving Aston Martin. Well, not quite leaving Aston Martin. He's stepping down as Chief Technical Officer, but they've been very keen to stress that he is staying within the Aston Martin group. Shez, I'm just going to hand you the baton at this point and just let you flow for a few minutes, and just so sorry to catch you off guard there, mate.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sort of surprised and not surprised at the same time about the Dan Fallows news. I think there's something to be said for the structure that's there at Aston Martin at the moment and what that's going to look like going forwards, but also Dan Fallows' record at Aston Martin over the past 2 and a bit years, right? So if you're going to start with the technical structure, the problem that they've got is that they've recruited so heavily. They've already got Enrico Cardile coming over from Ferrari into, I think, like the chief technical officer role, which is the role that Adrian Newey had at Red Bull, so the step above technical director. But now you've got Adrian Newey coming in as well, not only with a title at Aston Martin, but with shares in the team as well. How that was all going to fit together alongside Andy Cowell in the CEO role with his experience of power units, which is going to be absolutely pivotal, I think, when it comes to how the 2026 regulations are dealt with at Aston Martin. How Dan Fallows was then going to fit into that, I don't know. And I think Aston have had this recruitment drive where they've recruited people, used them, and then had so much money and so much allure to them somehow that they've been able to just either shuffle people into different positions or get rid of them completely. And that seems to be what's happened to Dan Fallows. But the unsurprising bit of this is that you kind of have to say that this is for the guy that was so heavily brought over, courted by Aston to bring him over from Red Bull. The amount that Red Bull didn't want to let him go, they fought for him to stay, made sure that he served his gardening leave. He's then come to Aston Martin, started off with a bang, but then it just hasn't really panned out, has it? Like, this is a guy that they had him over saying, like, if you're not going to get Adrian Newey, well, this is the next best thing. This is Adrian Newey's right-hand man. Everything that Newey knows, Fallows knows, and he's trying to make a name for himself on his own 2 feet, get out of the shadow of that great genius, and build something of his own. But the results didn't follow that, did they? That was a problem for Aston.
That's the big one for me here, is that yes, this is definitely related, and there's political manoeuvring here within the team with Fallows leaving and stepping away and Adrian Newey incoming. But also, I do feel like this is very much him being held accountable for an awful drop in form. I mean, if we think where Aston were at the beginning of last year, they were challenging for podiums. I mean, we thought Alonso was finally going to win again last year, and that was the extent of the progress they made. But since about halfway through last season, the drop in form has been absolutely awful. And this year, they're 300 or 200 points worse off than they were.
But Banksy,
last year.
That's I think their form at the beginning of 23 is actually a bit of an illusion. They were overperforming at a time when we know that both Ferrari and Mercedes turned up with a concept that wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
And both of those teams changed up their ideas mid-season. And unfortunately for Aston, they didn't go any further forwards. They brought updates that didn't do anything. In fact, they went backwards. They were still trialing their previous updates in Singapore last year. They were doing it again this season.
Yeah.
And yes, okay, there's a part of that is a fundamental truism of this set of regulations, that it's not so much that if you find downforce in the wind tunnel and the simulator that you whack it on and suddenly you're going to go faster. That's how it seemed to be in general in the seasons coming up to this one, to this rule set. But now, as Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull have shown that it's, despite what you might see in the wind tunnel, if you bring that without understanding how it interacts with the mechanical platform of the car, you're not going to go forwards, and you're just going to be scratching your head trying to work out what's gone wrong. And Aston seem to have been massively hit by that. And I can only see this as, look, I understand that all technical departments are made up of lots of people, but ultimately that integration of those ideas, the way that the different departments talk to each other, if that integration isn't done properly, ultimately that blame lands at the technical director's door. And it's something that Adrian Newey has done brilliantly, because he's had the experience from 50 years in motorsport, being in both Formula One and IndyCar, to have experience of all the different facets, race engineering, mechanical engineering, aerodynamics, to be able to bring all of that together into one cohesive whole, to make sure that everybody talks to each other in a way that allows the car to go forwards and not get bogged down by one team or the other. And despite Dan Fallows having worked under that structure, he just hasn't been able to replicate it, which is why Aston, I think, have gone for the man himself.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it doesn't, I think the problem that Aston have got at the minute, and this kind of goes back to their Racing Point days as well, is that they've kind of accrued a reputation for themselves as being the team that uses tracing paper. Because, I mean, the 2023 Aston Martin looked very similar to the Red Bull conceptually, but they took the difference with almost like the water slide side pods rather than the sort of undercut side pod. Here's my real technical knowledge coming out here. But then it was like, well, you got a really good concept, but then you can't develop it. So you got the tracing paper team and the team that can't develop. They'll bring a really good car at the start of the season. And I think, and also, look, remember what Fernando Alonso said at the start of the year? He said, oh, Aston are better than Mercedes. Because, of course, it was rumoured that they offered him a seat. I think he went to them and they said, well, we'll give you a 1-year deal. And then he turned it down. My view, that's how I see it. But I mean, he just looks like he's got egg on his face, though he's probably going to become a bit better when Newey gets going in 26, you think. But yeah, who knows?
But I also feel like Aston are a team that no matter how much they invest in infrastructure, how much they invest in facility, there's a glaring red sore thumb sticking out at you the whole time that makes you think, well, how committed are they? We all know who that is. It's
Yeah.
not Dan Fallows.
It is not Dan Fallows. No, it's somebody that drove into the gravel. Somebody that drove into the gravel. Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is just. I mean, Aston are a team I think we're going to be talking a lot about in the years to come. I think this is a World Championship team ready to go. When they eventually get it right, with the fact that they're investing in the new wind tunnel, with the infrastructure that they're bringing, Lawrence Stroll is very serious about this project, and it wouldn't surprise me if they then get money coming in from Saudi. That's long been rumored that they're going to have big Saudi money coming. They already have it with Aramco, but ownership of the team as well. So,
but I guess the caveat to all of this, right, is that that Adrian Newey, when he turned up at that press conference, he said one of the big things about coming to Aston Martin is that it's the last team on the grid now where the owner of the team is also super involved in the team itself.
Well, I mean, I think Toto Wolff might have something to say about that,
but that Lance, that Lawrence Stroll owns the entire team, right? It's his team.
He's 100% owner, whereas
Correct.
Toto shares it with Jim Radcliffe.
Or at least he is chairman of the board that run the team, right?
Yeah.
But that is a double-edged sword. And we know that Lawrence Stroll is always advertised as this guy that is a winner. I've won in everything. I am going to win in Formula One. That's his mantra. But with that comes a slightly unrealistic perception of what it takes to succeed in Formula One. And despite all of the investment, despite everything that's gone into the Formula One team, the fact that they've sacked Dan Fallows after less than 2 years in that role does smack of a bit of impatience as well, doesn't it? That I wanted results now. You didn't give them to me, so we're just going to get we're just going to get rid of you and bring in this new technical structure. And part of me has some sympathy for Dan Fallows when it comes to that. He didn't get the benefit of the new wind tunnel or the new simulator. They're still using the Mercedes wind tunnel at the moment, right? It's not a bad wind tunnel. Look what Mercedes have been able to do with it in the past. Not right now, but you know what I mean. But they are again working with one hand tied behind their back a little bit. And when the new stuff comes online, Fallows is already out. He doesn't get a chance to prove himself with all of that facility behind him. And maybe that is a little bit of the impatience of Lawrence Stroll. Will that kind of thing bite him in the butt? Like if Adrian Newey doesn't deliver results from the word go in 2026, doesn't matter who he is, what his reputation has been in the past. If he doesn't deliver, what's Lawrence Stroll going to do? Are we going to see him out on his ear?
Harder to do because he's a shareholder, which is why I think
he's quite a rich guy, though, isn't he, Lawrence Stroll? I'm sure he could buy them back off him.
Well, but would Adrian want to sell? That's the question. I mean, here's the thing. I think obviously Lawrence made the play and the reason why he probably went to Aston over Ferrari, say, was because they could give him shares in the team, and that's something he's always wanted. Look at why he left Williams all those years ago. But then now Adrian he's kind of also given himself a bit of a security blanket as well. But just quickly to end, Dan Fallows is not leaving the Aston group. So do we think he's probably going to move to the WEC project?
Yeah, that probably makes the most sense, doesn't it? Maybe he'll get his chance to build an Aston Martin road car. Maybe that's where he's going to go.
Potentially, yeah.
Wouldn't put that.
It's not entirely departing the team. It's not like you've got teams lining up to get him. I mean, I'm sure Mercedes or one of the.
But you'd feel that somebody would want him there, right? He's not somebody that has no credit in the bank at all.
Exactly.
No matter how he has performed, there are caveats to why Aston have performed the way they have, and if we're to believe everything that comes out of Milton Keynes, he did have a big part to play in the success story that was Red Bull. So it would be madness, I think, for other Formula One teams to not at least look at him and think, well, maybe he's our guy. I'm definitely thinking of Williams as a potential candidate.
Yeah, but they just have Pat Fry go to them, haven't they?
Yeah, Pat Fry is a guy that's going to sort your infrastructure out, right? Like, he knows what it takes to build the infrastructure to get you success. But with all due respect, Pat's been around for a really, really long time and has ended up now at Williams in their hour of need. When you start to ramp up your performance and you're no longer at the back of the grid and you're actually trying to be at the front, it's somebody with fresh ideas, someone with recent success that you want at the helm of that. And I think that's where somebody like Dan Fallows might do a bit better in a slightly more nurturing environment. I guess even technical people need nurturing.
Absolutely, yeah. We all need nurturing, don't we? And on that note, Shez, we're going to bring this little pit stop to an end. A massive thank you to Shez, where you can find Shez at ShezMed on Twitter, Tired GP on YouTube, one of the best F1 podcasts around that he runs with Amar. Obviously, not excluding this one, of course. Our producer Manny, you can find at Apex63 on Twitter, and then you can find me, BaxTB F1 on YouTube, BaxTB on Twitter. You can find us, Shifting Happens, at Shift Does Happen on Twitter and on Instagram as well. And if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more from us and you want to see Marshall's comments on Niels Bittich's departure, then please like this video and hit the subscribe button. It would mean a lot to us, and the algorithm will like it too. But from me and Shez and Apex, from me, Shez and Fly, I've been BaxTB, and stay safe. We'll speak to you all very, very soon.